Hi, my name is Susie, and today I will be talking about what I define critical thinking as and how as the course of the class has progressed. I've learned to enhance and deepen my critical thinking skills, how my BS detector has evolved, and what things I will do to make it, stay alive. So, with that said, let me give you the definition that after reading articles and being in this class and watching movies and documentaries and whatnot, I have crafted up a definition according to me of what I think critical thinking is. So, I think, I use the word crafted in my definition, okay, a carefully crafted thought process which displays one's insights and opinions on a certain topic. So, with that said, let me just rephrase what I just said. I said thought process. A thought process is, in fact, a process that, it's a thing that's not tangible. It's cannot be memorized. It cannot be replicated. It's not a habit. A thought process cannot be engendered. It must be learned, must be analyzed, must be dissected piece by piece and taken further into a more in-depth critical analyzation, a deeper analyzation. As Passmore states from his essay on teaching to be critical, it's important to have these kinds of teachers, especially in today's modern society when it is necessary to think critically. Teachers that are not scared to talk about controversial issues, teachers who don't resent talking about politics, religion, or sex. We need teachers who do not follow the letter but the spirit of the law. And it is crucial to have these teachers who can be themselves, who themselves can be questioned upon their quality and standard of teaching and on the value of their own performance. So, super crucial to have these kinds of teachers, especially in a world that thrives on deceiving truths, manipulating ideas, and basically etching a syllabus onto a child's forehead along with a curriculum and saying, hey, this is what you need to memorize, this is what you need, I fulfilled my curriculum, my prerequisites, you're out, next 30 kids. No. This child is going to be faced, this child can be any one of us, and is going to be faced one day with a critical decision that they make in life, and they're going to be like, what the hell, all I learned was to memorize things for like a useless memorization, for a test, a useless test. No. So, the quality, so that's that. So I'm thankful for Professor Miller and his high quality standard of critical thinking teaching. I wish he was here to hear that. And thanks to his expertise, and I'm proud to say my BS detector along with my critical skills have expanded and will continue to grow, especially now that I find myself questioning everything and everyone. I now ask myself, even if these people come from legitimate sources, are authoritarian figures from the All-American Journal or the Scientific something, am I going to believe what these people are saying just because they have a legit title or they have a career title as doctor, scientist? No, I'm going to take everything in with a grain of salt. I'm going to dissect everything piece by piece as aforementioned. And I'm going to do, I think a lot about the Milgram experiment at times, and I think about all the dozens of people that were deceived by the white lab coat, and I think myself, I do not want to be one of those dozens of people that become deceived in everyday life, and that's why I question everything, and that's how I will keep my BS detector alive, because the day I stop questioning, and the day I just start accepting, will be the day that I will have dishonored my brain, my cognitive resources, myself, my society, my existence. The day that I start accepting and just not participating and putting my input into everything is the day I will become a vegetable. And I don't want to be like that. So we all need to stop letting authority figures indoctrinate us, drill us, and we need to start acting and thinking beyond and above the box, this confined box we're in. No. We need to start questioning everything, and that's the end of my speech.
Okay, next we'll do Leo, for the sake of the order.
It's in alphabetical order.
Yeah, but there's like 3 people are going to have to do finals afterwards, so we're going to do them immediately.
Jen, I don't need you to time me. I can time myself.
Instant 50.
I just don't need her to like the yelling like distracts me. No, I'm just saying the yelling distracts me. That's all. Don't worry, I'm not trying to mislead the audience.
You distract him.
You're just so distracting.
Leo, can you stand where the camera is?
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. My name's Lia Yang. This is my final speech.
Hi, Leo.
I want you to all think back for a moment to when you first found out that you got accepted to UCLA. You might have logged into the UCLA website, biting your fingernails nervously, hoping for good news. Or maybe your mom and dad told you, tears of joy streamed down their face. Or you might have opened the email as you sat on the toilet. Now consider this. What if you didn't get into UCLA? What would you have done then? Would you have lied about it? Maybe to your parents to avoid seeing their disappointment? Or maybe you would tell your parents that you got accepted into UCLA and USC, and that you'll be splitting your time in between either school. This sounds absurd, I know, but this has happened before. In 2015, a Korean girl living in Virginia found out that she didn't get into any of the Ivy League schools that she wanted to go to, so she did what any average 17-year-old would do. She lied to her parents, not just about getting into, say, Harvard, but she actually told her parents that she got into Harvard and Yale, and that both schools wanted her so bad that they were willing to do the half here, half there scenario that I mentioned earlier. She even said that Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, called her and said, "Hey, it's Mark Zuckerberg, you should go to Harvard." But here's the craziest part. Her parents believed every word of it. They were so proud of her that they even told hundreds of relatives and friends who also believed her and spread it to news outlets in Virginia and South Korea. Then Harvard and Yale released a statement saying that they never accepted this so-called genius girl, nor did they ever let a student split time between their prestigious institutions. But what made her parents, friends, and relatives believe what she said? Why didn't they have lie detectors that would have let them see right through the muck? That's what I'm going to be talking about today. In my speech, I will first define critical thinking and how I think thinking critically has shaped my life, both then and now. Second, I will take you through some of the steps I've learned from this class to strengthen my lie detector. And finally, I'm going to show you how you can be a better critical thinker and lie detector, not only in terms of climate science, but also in your everyday lives. All right, let's do it. According to John Passmore's essay on teaching to be critical, critical thinking is more like a character trait than it is a skill. Passmore says, indeed, although science is the most striking example of critico-creative thinking, a term he coined, it is often taught in a way that never allows the student to think critically. This brings me back to my first point. In terms of thinking critically, I've always been one of the most critical people I know. I constantly question everything I hear and consider it very skeptically until I see irrefutable evidence firsthand. Through taking this class, I learned that this is a strength, not a weakness, as I previously thought. Now, I'm going to lay out some of the steps that I take to think critically and detect possible lies, and hopefully this will leave you with something that will help you further your own lie detector. For the sake of time, I'm going to combine the two, critical thinking and lie detecting, as they are closely interrelated. In order to think critically, you have to expect people to lie to you. Think about your lie detector like a fire alarm. Fire alarms are designed to expect a fire at any moment, and that's why they're so useful. In the same way, you can only improve your lie detector by adding some internal doubt to everything you hear. After reading John Passmore's essay, I've come to the conclusion that it's not just thinking critically, it's being critical. Because being critical is as essential to our lives as being happy, if not more. Over the past 10 weeks of this course, I have learned that there are a couple of questions that you should always ask when you're thinking critically or trying to detect a lie. The first is this: how do you know? Through my debate, as well as 8 others, I learned that source credibility is important. After all, if your source is not credible, how can people expect you to be? Identifying the credibility or lack of credibility is an easy way to point out the fallacies in what you hear. Next, what are the counter-arguments to what you just said? By completing many of the journals assigned to this class, I have learned that asking for the counter-argument will either force them to back up their position or end the discussion because they just don't know enough on the topic. It's easy to believe polar bears are going extinct because of global warming, until you find out that there have been significant increases in polar bear populations and that polar bears are actually doing better than ever. Here's a hint. If they say that there is no counter-argument, stop talking to them. Not only are they trying to waste your time, but they also think that you're a moron. This class has taught me that being critical means being the person to ask why, instead of simply sitting back and nodding your head. In the Milgram experiment, they talk about authority, and this relates to that. Looking back at the big picture, by questioning everything we hear about global warming and approaching it very skeptically, maybe we can finally open up discussion on this topic. We live in a world where those who blindly agree with climate science are praised, and those who critically question climate science are labeled as deniers or liars. When everyone around you, when you question everything you hear and think critically about the facts said, you signal everyone around you, saying, hey, my world, our world, it's going to be an honest one. My world is going to be one where truth is strengthened and lies are recognized and discredited. And when you do that, the ground around you starts to shift, just a little bit. And that's the truth.
All right, and Shane next.
Wait, you guys, a Harvard Yale chick went to my high school. It was the biggest thing.
No way.
Not kidding. She was shipped back to Korea. And she had it was a whole thing.
Damn.
Did you ever wonder if they killed his parents because like he was headed to
I don't know what happened.
to go on the money and just like travel and see and she didn't and the parents found out they were crazy.
All right, everybody, quiet down, please.
Some crazy Asian shit.
All right, can you center a little bit? Thank you. All right, guys, quiet down. Speech time.
All right. Hey, everybody. I'm Shane.
Hi.
Hi, Shane.
Hi, Shane.
So today I want to talk about critical thinking. Interesting stuff. Got some thoughts on it. Taking this class changed my view on what critical thinking is. And, you know, originally I thought of myself as, of course I'm a critical thinker. I think critically, you know. I got into UCLA. That's like the first box you check. I am a critical thinker. But I realized that I wasn't thinking critically about things that I disagreed with. There were certain things that I had just internalized, took them at face value, and that's what I believe. You know, why would I need to think critically about that? Especially something like climate change, which I think back to the first day in this class, reading the syllabus, seeing that, you know, I'm going into this class thinking, okay, there's debate, so what are we going to be debating on? You know, I'm thinking of highly controversial topics in my head. Climate change is not one of them. You know, I'm thinking, that's settled, that's, you know, not something worth debating on. Like, how are we going to spend a whole quarter talking about this? But it wasn't until going into this class and really debating on something that I thought had been settled that I realized it's not that there was something wrong with my opinions about climate change. In fact, a lot of them haven't changed. You know, I still believe it's caused by man and there's a lot of things we need to do about it. But I hadn't thought about why I believe those things. I hadn't really gotten down to what formed those opinions in my mind. What made me believe that climate change is real, it's happening, all that good stuff. It was also ironic to see the Milgram experiment on the syllabus because I watched that in my high school psychology class, and I remember watching that and I came away with like, isn't it crazy, like, you know, how susceptible some people are to obedience like that, like that would never be me type of thing. And it was interesting taking this class, realizing that I had the wool pulled over my eyes as well. Let's see. So my BS detector has evolved because I now have it running all the time. Like now I constantly question everything. I let people convince me that they know what they're talking about. I assume that they have no idea what they're talking about and let them prove me otherwise. But I think a way that we can expand the use of our BS detector is holding that same rigor that we now expect from other people to ourselves. Going back, thinking about all the things that we believe, and forcing ourselves to prove that again to ourselves. How do we know that? You know, what are we basing those beliefs on? Now for like the crux of my speech, being that the biggest thing I now know for certain as far as critical thinking is that, at least in my experience, public education has, through all these years, you know, said that they were trying to teach me to think critically, and in fact, I think they've done the exact opposite. I think they've dulled my sense of thinking critically. And Passmore describes a hypothetical school that hinders the critical spirit, and there's this awesome quote, which is, a school in which teachers never deviate from a fixed syllabus, in which masters and students alike frown on every deviation from the conventional norm, is unlikely to encourage originality in its pupils, although its products may be well-drilled and, within limits, highly skilled. And I don't know about for you guys, like when I read that, like I immediately just thought of high school specifically, you know, like the amount of information I've taken in over the years that was just drilled into my head. Like it wasn't, there was no thinking outside the box, there was no other answer, it was, you know, just what can you learn for this test, what information can you regurgitate and then forget for the rest of your life. And that's not thinking critically. That's just learning to memorize things. And so I really think the education system in this country, of course, I can only speak for myself, but I feel like other people, that resonates with other people. I feel like the education system has failed people to really facilitate critical thinking. And I think facilitating critical thinking is probably the most important thing we can try and teach the kids of this next generation, because we've already seen in the age of information and misinformation the negative consequences that result from not thinking critically. If you just look at the White House and what's going on around the world, you can already see the effects now. I can only imagine how much worse that's going to get if we don't teach our kids to think critically. And so yeah, that's my call to action. I think, and going off of that, if we can't necessarily expect our public schools to give that to our kids, some of us are going to be parents some days, and just remember to lead by example and teach your kids to not accept everything they learn, including what you tell them. No one's word is law, and to think outside the box on things.
Okay, next we'll do Daniel.
Sam, are you writing down the time?
He's not overtime, right? Call out if anyone is overtime. Okay, awesome. Thank you.
I have a flight at 6. I need to pack. So can I go at like 2?
Sure.
Is the camera ready?
Yeah.
Are you ready?
Here's something you want
I know.
valuable skill.
Ready?
Yeah.
So a week after my debate in this class, I debated again. This time I won. The debate started with a question to which I answered, I do. Now, before I ask you it, I want you all to raise your right hand. Come on, let's go. Do you solemnly state that the testimony you give before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do.
I do.
That's right. I was sworn in court on May 23rd, 8 a.m. in Inglewood. Now, why the hell was I there? Because I didn't have a BS detector or critical thinking skills last September. So I got accepted to UCLA, and the first thing I did was go apartment hunting. And I got signed a lease on September 1st, and after discussing furnishing options with the manager, I noticed a dead cockroach on the floor. He's like, don't worry about it. The previous tenant had a bug problem, and we sprayed it once, and we'll spray it again before you move, right? And me being my naive self, I'm thinking, no big deal. I was wrong. So after moving in and spending my first night there, I was bombarded with cockroaches everywhere. The place was infested. It was a shit show. I spent like 7 hours moving shit to my car as fast as I could. And the next day I demanded a refund, and I wanted all my fucking money back. And I demanded my lease be void. And he said, I'll look into it. So a month passed by, I sent 2 demand letters, no response. Then finally I get a fucking check in the mail. They deducted $1,500. So what did I do? File a lawsuit for 3 civil code violations: uninhabitable conditions, failure to disclose a pest control contract, and an illegal deduction of security policy. And so back to the hearing. Now, before any case is heard, the judge always asks you to disclose evidence with each other, and they want you to negotiate, or try to. And this landlady, she was a bitch. She didn't want to negotiate. You know what she told me? She's like, you have no case. I'm just going to tell the judge how many times I cleaned the apartment before you moved in. Then in my head, I'm like, okay, fuck this. Like, I'm going to whoop your ass. Spoiler alert, I fucking did that. So, like, no joke. The judge saw right through her BS, and let's see here. Got a judgment in my favor. I'm still waiting for the check in the mail, by the way. But anyway, so like, yeah, after that point, like, my BS detector got really sharp. Like, and I had to get really sharp. And the next test that came was like, would I stand up for somebody else's BS they were experiencing? And so last quarter, somebody told me about this professor. You may have heard of him, Keith Fink. Yeah, you coached him, by the way. So, yeah, so I took his class, signed up for his class, and on the first day, like, Keith basically gave the spiel of like how the comm department was like fucking with him and shit, like messing with his PTEs, class sizes, and screwing up his excellence review. And basically, unlike the Milgram experiment, unlike that subject in there, I wasn't going to like obey the comm department's agenda, and you know. So I decided to write an article for the Daily Bruin and stand up for Fink. And it finally got published on June 5th. Yeah, I'm in the paper. Okay, so I went online and scrolled down to the comments, and then some people, like, should have seen my face. Like, some people called me hero, some people called me courageous. It's like, wow. But on a serious note, like, even though Fink will probably not be a professor here next quarter, like, the people supporting him, like students, past students, and just random people was pretty powerful. Like, even though they're not experiencing the BS themselves, they're willing to stand up. Their willingness to fight is powerful. For example, I saw Jen pop up in the Daily Green the other day. Like, she was pictured protesting for Pink and was quoted saying, "Nobody pays attention because our campus is so liberal. Everybody deserves the right to free speech, even professors." And, like, however, as you know, her BS detector was not just limited to Pink's class. In this class, like, after Tanner debated the second time, she told us, like, how gender plays a role in how we perceive aggression. And even though, like, you may or may not agree with her, that's still a pretty courageous thing to do. And that's what critical thinking is all about, like, being courageous. I mean, it's one thing to have a BS detector, but it's another thing to, like, act upon it. And it's even hard to do that in the face of adversity. And some people, you should all deliver poetic justice while you're at this universe. So speaking of which, critical thinking needs to be put into words. What good are our thoughts if they're never heard? When our light bulb goes off, we need to shine. When we face adversity, we need to show our spine. When bullshit is served on a platter, we need to step up to the plate like a batter. We have to swing back at whatever is thrown, because bullshit is a strike in every zone. If we sit back and take a pitch, we'll bury ourselves in a deep ditch. The bullshit will pile on, and eventually reach a height of a mile long. But we can't just stand up for ourselves only. 30. In the war against bullshit, we are not lonely. An attack against truth and justice is attack on all. If we don't stand up for each other, we'll all fall. So don't sit back and be just another witness. Stand in the picket line like Jennifer Gittes. For others to see, and to be the role model we all need to be. Thank you.
Okay, let's try to keep the obscenity like slightly down. Not like entirely, but
The what down?
maybe the one fuck rule will limit it. Okay, next up, Aliana, you have to go.
Good speech.
Thank you.
Slide box.
My center, am I good?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi all, my name is Aliana.
Hi, Aliana.
I'm here to discuss with you all what it means to think critically and how my BS detector has evolved over the course of our debates in this class. I will use the overarching example of my Bulgarian family to illustrate points made by both Passmore and Milgram in my discussion of critical thinking and authority before moving into how my personal ability to think critically and BS detector have gotten stronger over the past 10 weeks. Critical thinking, as defined by the authors of our textbook, is defined as the use of internal dialogue to decide what to do or believe. This means we have to fuse our individual and social perspectives to make a well-rounded decision. John Passmore, in his essay on Teaching to be Critical, discusses the nature of critical thinking and several misconceptions people have toward it. He spends some time exploring the dichotomy between critical thinking, that is, a need for formal knowledge followed by the ability to question. Passmore explicitly states here that education is not indoctrination in terms of critical thinking, as this implies that critical thinking is something that can be imparted and then summoned upon. For example, it's not meant to make us soldiers. A soldier, when he hears the call to attention, will drop everything to salute. Passmore stresses that this kind of indoctrination is not what makes up critical analysis and cannot be taught in this way. One point that I found to be particularly interesting and important is Passmore's comment that educators have the responsibility to teach students that authority shouldn't be wholly accepted or rejected. This made me think of my mom, who grew up in an all-or-none society when Bulgaria was still communist. I called her to ask her what she thought about this concept, since my first thought was that critical thinking can't exist in that type of environment. My mom broke down Passmore's concept of the educator further by telling me about the socio-political and personal spheres at the time in addition to her formal education. She said that critical thinking was obviously not present in the socio-political sphere. Propaganda was everywhere, and the government sought to limit the population's thought. However, I knew that my mom had developed critical thinking skills along the way. What she stressed to me was that she learned to think critically indirectly in school, but mostly from her family. This is what I think to be the most important component to critical thinking, and is something that Passmore didn't really touch on in his essay. My mom said that it was her family that really taught her to challenge her environment and make decisions for herself. We have a phrase in Bulgaria that goes, "Napravi si sam," which means do it yourself or make yourself. This concept of a strong authority directly relates to the Milgram experiment and how we respond to that kind of pressure.
In his 1974 study, Milgram concluded that people either respond to authority out of fear or out of a desire to please. I can again refer to my family as an example as to why I think the former is more powerful. My great-grandpa, an outspoken anti-communist, was jailed many decades ago. My great-grandma spent 2 years hopping from prison to prison looking for him before she finally found him and was able to bring him home. After that, my family was nowhere near as vocal as it used to be, and this reinforces the idea that authority can be a barrier to critical thinking. Moving away from my family as a way to illustrate the theory behind critical thinking, I'd like to tell you guys about how my critical thinking and BS detector have evolved with this class. Like I told you last week, all my years of schooling up until this point reinforced the idea that global warming is anthropogenic and an environmental disaster. However, arguing as a leader of the opposition for a topic I had always thought to be correct really challenged my ability to think critically. I started to question evidence and sources I had previously taken for granted, and now I know that a lot of what I choose to believe is based on information that someone has spun in their favor. And this begs the question, how much have I chosen to believe on my own, and how many of my beliefs have been fed to me without any critical analysis on my part? Thus, my BS detector has grown, and that I now need to corroborate what someone tells me with my own investigation of their evidence and motives. This is especially true in terms of looking at an argument from a holistic perspective. For example, I was guilty of not doing this in my debate. I would use one sentence of an entire study to refute the government's argument, even though the study as a whole supported their claims a lot more than mine. And ultimately, my BS detector is ready to go wherever I go. I will definitely continue to use it in terms of climate change with the fallout of the Paris Agreement, as well as any democratic setting in which I have an influence over the outcome, for example, political elections, etc. But most importantly, I will use my BS detector in my daily life as I make small but meaningful decisions. To conclude, I'd like to thank Professor Miller for pushing the boundaries of my critical analysis and helping my BS detector evolve. I hope that you all enjoyed my example of my family in Bulgaria to round out what critical thinking consists of. If you didn't catch on, they mean a lot to me. I hope that using my new critical analysis and BS detector, I can turn napravi si sam, which means do it yourself, into napravi si sam. I did it myself. Thank you.
Ascania?
So, good.
Yeah.
This class has increased my capacity to think critically. Before this class, I strongly believed in climate change. Namely the Obama politicized version of it, and the version of it taught by my Geography 5 professor, which was climate change is real and it's going to kill us all if we do not do something about it. I refused to debate the topic with people because I knew I was right. Little did I realize that I was contributing to the scientific elitism and the party polarization that has split the United States. It takes a lot for me to acknowledge that I was wrong, but I was wrong. And I regret it. I think that critical thinking is essential in our day and age because debates like immigration, gun control, the list goes on, require a level of critical thinking that means you need to see past your subjective opinion of it. I feel like ideology gets involved in important debates, but I think it's also important to analyze things objectively, which is something that not a lot of people do. Now, when asked what I think about global warming, I answer, I believe in global warming, but I also think that politicians exaggerate it. I've learned to think critically about it. And this answer has actually led to some really interesting debates with people who were, like me, very firm believers in climate change. The question, what do we now know, is generally established by what the government thinks. Under the Obama administration, it was global warming is a reality, and under the Trump administration, it is that it isn't. And if you're the average United States citizen who has been told that the President of the United States is the most important person in this country, what are you supposed to do? Are you supposed to have your views like molded like putty constantly every 4 years, like reassessing your like reality of the world? Like, if you take the Milgram experiment as truth, then yes, that is what most people think like. And I'm sure there are a lot of people who went from believing strongly in climate change to like believing against it just because of what the president said. I think what those people and me before this class could have used is a BS detector, one that makes you question whether what you're hearing is the truth, regardless of whether the person saying it is an authority or not. My friend was using the statistic about immigration in a talk we had, and like normally I would have just accepted it, right? But instead I was annoying and I looked it up on my phone, and it turns out to be a statistic Trump invented, which was completely wrong and unfounded in every way. So by doing this, yeah, you know, it's annoying to like pull out your phone every time someone says a statistic, but sometimes if you feel like what they're saying could be wrong, you should probably do it, because they might either be making it up or citing a source that is completely wrong. To expand on this, I think we should use this detector not just on other people, but on ourselves, as a way of challenging ourselves and pushing past our predefined ideologies in every type of debate, not just climate change, but like anything political, anything that's politicized. We should like actually think about it, rather than just accept a notion that we've already established ourselves. So onto the Passmore reading.
1 minute.
He talked about rote learning and said that was bad. I think that rote learning is good. I think that that is a way that you need to memorize things. Like without rote learning, I wouldn't succeed in my history classes, I wouldn't learn formulas, and I would probably fail in school. That being said, it is important to balance that rote learning with a certain level of critical thinking in order to fully develop yourself as an individual and succeed in this world. If we just rote learn, we're going to be idiots. If we're just critical thinking, then we're argumentative assholes. There needs to be a balance in between that. One which I hope, after this class,
30.
I have achieved. Thank you.
Okay, unless anybody else has any pressing need to go early, we'll continue with the alphabetical order with Lauren.
Alrighty, hi everyone, my name is Lauren. So admittedly, definitely before this class, I would consider myself kind of a gullible person. I would just readily accept the validity of facts placed before me. You know, I didn't really critically think about the truth behind it, nor did I consider alternative arguments. Nevertheless, I did always try to believe that there are always two sides or two points of views to every argument and every story. But this entire process has really taught me to not readily accept the information that I am directly given, and instead I should always critically think about it, because you never know how an opposing point of view might change or alter your own personal beliefs and actions. This is a skill that I learned from this class, and that has not only grown my overall educational experience, but has also improved the way that I address everyday interactions as well as approach opposing viewpoints. So I learned that critical thinking and viewing two sides of an argument can help us be better prepared to approach adverse situations, you know, make more informed decisions, as well as establish our own beliefs. Many times I would go into these debates thinking one side of the argument was true, but then after hearing the opposition's viewpoint, I was then completely changed and left the debate with two very different viewpoints. For example, when I watched the film An Inconvenient Truth, I was convinced that humans were the direct cause of global warming and that we needed to act now in order to, you know, fix this very large issue. However, after watching The Great Global Warming Swindle, which was definitely an opposing and less popular point of view, I was able to see that maybe humans weren't as directly the cause of global warming as we might believe. Nevertheless, we do live in a society that doesn't always foster or encourage critical thinking and opposing viewpoints, so it can be quite difficult to think critically and question information placed before us. In John Passmore's essay, he suggests that these authoritative educational systems do not always promote the growth of critical thinking, and instead just stress the adherence to strict rules and just retaining facts without much questioning. I think one of the main aspects of and struggles of critical thinking is the ability to realize that the possibility that established rules could be wrong or that popular beliefs and norms should be changed. This class has also allowed me to practice and grow my critical thinking skills through these argumentation journals as well as the in-class debates. So for example, it wasn't until after kind of learning more about the Milgram experiment as well as doing the journal about the authorities in my life did I realize that these authoritative figures such as our teachers, or even our parents have greatly impacted, my own personal beliefs and values. Most of the times I would not question these authoritative figures and I just always believed that what they said to be true. However, I now realize that at this point in my life, I do really need to start critically thinking about the information that I accept from these authoritative figures and instead develop my own opinions based on my own beliefs and experiences, which I believe are just as valid as theirs. And now moving on to the debates, I was able to kind of see two different approaches to reducing CO2, unilaterally versus multilaterally. I was able to see that sometimes there are two solutions to the exact same problem. Before the debates, I did believe that the U.S. should take upon a multilateral approach and be a part of the Paris Agreement, that it was the one and only option. However, after preparing my debates and really critically thinking about the two sides, I realized that maybe a more unpopular but unilateral approach, such as the carbon fee and dividend plan, might also work as well. Just because a solution is widely accepted doesn't necessarily mean that it's perfect, nor does it mean that another solution can't accomplish the same goal. Now, as a result of this class, I believe my BS detector has really grown where I don't accept the validity of information as easily as before, and I really do consider opposing viewpoints in order to develop my own opinion. I can apply what I've learned to future arguments, whether that be with my friends, my parents, etc. And I also believe that critical thinking really contributes to this open-minded environment that can increase the understanding among people. This process of critically thinking has really opened my eyes to being more accepting of opposing beliefs and has made me more open to criticism of both my own thought as well as others. Being in college, we are constantly being thrown new information and new different viewpoints, especially at a large school like UCLA. And I think this is a perfect time in order to grow our critical thinking skills and just gain the courage to speak out against authority and just question popular belief. Throughout this whole experience, I now have a new perspective on information placed before me. I'm more open to opposing arguments, and I feel like I can make a more informed decision for myself, and I hope you guys can too. Thank you for a great quarter.
Oh, you need to pass the... Wait, see. Then we've got Arthur.
Wait, Sam, did you bring that?
Yeah. Okay, Tanner. Thanks.
Okay. Any graduating seniors? Congratulations, you guys. Okay. Anyways, so back to the topic again. So critical thinking, whether you were born with it or developed it over time, the ability to think critically is a muscle that can be strengthened with training and repetition, or can atrophy if it falls into disuse. Is what Passmore tells us. With the ability to think critically comes the development of a BS detector, which can alert you to arguments that are not kosher. John Passmore argues that students are at a disadvantage because most of us are raised and educated in a way that is not conducive to critical discussion.
Can you speak up, please?
Yeah, sorry. Educators and authorities in our lives seek to indoctrinate us so thoroughly that nothing we encounter to the contrary can possibly sway us. It is through this model that we develop our tendency towards obedience to authority, which was detailed by Milgram in his experiment. I came into this class with a fairly solid BS detector. I knew that people can be incorrect or just flat out dishonest, and that people can have an agenda. I understand that people sometimes BS because it suits them better than the truth for a given situation. What I gained from this class is a complete appreciation of just how difficult it is to be truly critical and not just a contrarian. I developed a better sense of how important it is to critically consider sources and the possible motivations of those sources. In this class, you can't sit on the fence. You have to come down on one side or the other. You're exposed to all sorts of different material, framed in different ways, all with the purpose of persuading you. In the end, the choice is yours, and you and your BS detector are forced to make a decision. It is important to have opinions, and before taking this course, I chose to remain blissfully neutral on a number of topics. But just as important as having an informed opinion is making sure your position does not become hardened and unassailable in your own mind. You must constantly be critical of your own thoughts and opinions, and never shut yourself off from receiving new information. In the humanities, the only truth is the one that you discern for yourself. Going off into the world, you will be forced to make sense of it all. Milgram tells us that most people will blindly follow authority, and Passmore tells us that most people lack the capacity and upbringing to think critically. But the people in this class are not most people. They all have a BS detector and they're not afraid to use it. Everything that we have learned in this class serves to elevate the level of discourse in our lives. We have gained the knowledge and skills to challenge authoritative figures through research, structuring and supporting arguments, and engaging in the 4 steps of refutation. On a personal and professional level, the skills we have worked to develop in this class will carry over in our lives outside the classroom and help us to be critical thinkers for the rest of our lives. The ability to engage in effective argumentation is a key life skill that we can apply to other facets of our lives as well. The ability to use evidence and properly refute arguments is a key aspect of effective decision making. To sum it all up, this class taught me not only how to construct arguments, but equally as importantly, how to deconstruct, debunk, and refute them. The development of my critical thinking and the evolution of my BS detector will positively impact my life. My increased awareness of authorities and my reaction to them will help me to better critically understand my own decision-making process and help me navigate the pitfalls outlined in the Milgram experiment. All in all, I think the most important thing to take away with you this summer and into the rest of your lives is to always let your BS detector be your guide. Thank you.
Okay, Crystal?
Hi, I'm Crystal, and first I'll discuss how John Passmore's essay and the climate change debates shape my perspectives on critical thinking. Then I'll discuss how the hasty generalizations and assumptions that we observed in our argumentation journals get in the way of the critical thinking process, and then I'll conclude with how everything that I've discussed helped my BS detector to evolve and how I can use it outside of this class and throughout life. So with the first point, with Passmore's essay and our debates, I came into this class believing that global warming exists and that we shouldn't even be debating about it. I grew up in the heart of liberal San Francisco, and so I have the mentality that everyone who denied global warming was just very, very conservative. But after listening to everyone's debates, I realized that global warming really is a controversial issue based on the burden of proof and the preponderance of evidence. And so with that being said, before I made a mistake, I did what John Passmore talked about in his essay, in that I blindly and unquestioningly accepted authority. I simply believed in global warming because my teachers told me so, and my teachers believed in global warming because some scientist from an Ivy League said so. And so we made the mistake of sort of alluding to what Milgram found in his experiment, of just believing that being a scientist and going to an Ivy League institution was authority in and of itself. But now I know that facts themselves don't have inherent authority. They're not subjective, but how they are interpreted and imbued with meaning is. And facts can be used to support one viewpoint over another. They can be construed to support a biased worldview. And also, authority isn't inherent, but rather given. And so in my case, I adhere to the authority of scientists who found these facts, that temperatures were rising and natural disasters were increasing, to support my biased worldview that global warming exists. Great. But with our critical thinking skills, we now know to question the facts, critically question the evidence, and critically question the authority that issues these evidence and facts to us. We have to critically question, debate, argue, analyze, and challenge things that are given to us at face value, things that we are just told to believe, and we have to just open the table to debate and accept new points of views, especially things that might contradict our own, because that's how we are ultimately going to find real solutions and answers to the problems. And so with my second point with hasty generalizations, from what I've observed in my argumentation journals, whether it was a stranger stereotyping Muslims, my friend talking about a failed date she just had, or another friend stereotyping communications majors, I learned that making generalizations are prevalent throughout our entire lives because it's a part of human nature. It's a part of human nature to just conceptualize, compartmentalize, and categorize things that are unfamiliar to us or things we don't quite understand to make our lives a lot easier. But despite that, we can still question these generalizations, because from the Milgram experiment, we know that failing to question generalizations has some negative consequences, whether it be in the personal sphere or the political, social, historical sphere. And also there's a certain power and authority that you gain from questioning generalizations that are so often accepted as a self-evident truth. And so to conclude, my BS detector has certainly evolved throughout this class. I know now to question the evidence and the facts and critically question the authority that finds these facts, as well as question generalizations made, and we can apply our BS detectors and critical thinking skills throughout our entire lives, not just in the classroom setting, but in the workplace or just with family and friends, but not too much because it'll make you antisocial and kind of weird, but in appropriate situations, because in general, it just makes you a more well-informed, well-educated, and a better decision-making person. Thank you.
I'm going to change